lot of activities at HIMG for our community, so please know that your input is very important to us, so let us know what you would like to see. And especially Dr. Stevens, she has been a huge asset and is an asset and is very receptive to topics. She even asks me, well, what do you think? So we always come up with some plans together, and she works with you that way. So Dr. Stevens joined us, gosh, 2 years now. That's hard to believe. So she is a clinical psychologist. She sees patients here. She has her own practice, but she also teaches at Marshall University. She's in the community everywhere doing things for our high schools, other community organizations. So she's a graduate of Marshall as well as received a certification from the University of Massachusetts. So we welcome her again today, and again, talk to her, ask questions. She likes to be interactive with the participants. So thank you, Dr. Steve.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much. And just to kind of echo what Patty was saying, absolutely, if you have any questions as we're going through today's talk, please let me know. If you do like it on Facebook or tend to view it on Facebook, I'll also be monitoring that for any kind of questions and feedback and be able to respond to that as well. The biggest goal of our Lunch and Learns is to make them applicable to your own life. And the only way that we can do that is through your feedback and through your participation in them. So thank you all again so much for being here. Like Patty said, generally every second Tuesday of the month from 12 to 1 is kind of what we've determined as our time to host these. And any topics that you might want to have or discuss or learn more about, let her know about a week in advance, and usually I can pull something up or already have something ready. Okay. What we're going to be spending today kind of talking about, and of course appropriately so, right, since it's January, is ways in which we can kind of form a healthier us, a healthier view of ourselves, or healthier behaviors to assist us long-term within our lives. As we go through and talk about this is applicable if you're the patient, if you're here for your loved one, or if you're a medical provider, because all of the things that we're going to talk about are relevant because it's about us as humans, right? And so we just want to kind of be very aware and mindful of these things. So as a clinical and health-based psychologist, we always believe in giving you informed consent to what we're going to be talking about. And so as part of that today, what we're going to spend the majority of our time together is just discussing general keys to success. How, if we are going to start a healthier lifestyle, are we going to be successful in maintaining that long term? As you know, January 1st rolls around, everybody's making these New Year's resolutions or whatever, and they are usually over by the first week in January. Most are over by the end of January, okay? Only a small percentage of the population actually continues them throughout the year. And so we're actually going to scrap that idea of resolutions. So if you came here hoping to make them, I'm sorry, we're going to do something different instead. Hopefully this will be more effective if we use some of these tools for success. We're going to be talking about sleep, because that's one area in our lives that we pay very little attention to, and yet it is one of the most important for us if we are trying to start healthier behaviors. If we have a chronic medical condition like diabetes or heart disease, making sure that we're getting adequate sleep is incredibly important for us whenever it comes to that. If our goal is to lose weight, sleep is also a part of that process as well. So it's a very, very important thing that we don't often pay a lot of mindfulness to. We're going to be talking some about nutrition. I don't like the word diet. It's a bad 4-letter word for me, okay? My list of 4-letter words is sometimes different than everybody else's, and that's up at the top. Because automatically when we hear it, it generates thoughts in our heads that we don't already want to do it, right? It's very hard to stick to, and it insinuates it's something that's short term. And if we're talking about forming a healthier version of ourselves, we want this to be long term. We don't want to be on a yo-yo. And we're going to spend some time talking about activities. And whether that be exercise, hobbies, and self-care, making sure that we're focused on all of those components of self is very important. So, with that being said, whenever we're thinking about maybe if we did make those New Year's resolutions, or if we do have some goals for ourselves and moving forward, we want to kind of keep these keys to success in mind. The most important, and actually one that I spend a whole lot of time discussing with my patients and try to promote in my own life, is making sure that we have consistency in schedules and routines. At different points in our life, this is somewhat easier, right? For school children, they are able to have some level of consistency in schedules and routines because they're having to get up at a certain time, go to school for a certain time, come home, and then have a certain set of activities that hopefully generally happen within their homes. Whenever we're through the working phase of our life, our work usually provides that set schedule, okay, or at least a semblance of one. And so it's helpful at those points. But it's whenever these things are not well formed or they're inconsistent is whenever we tend to fall short. It's whenever we have a lot of discrepancies within our schedules and routines is whenever conflict happens, and then we just want to quit, or it causes more stress within our lives. So in each of the areas that we're going to be talking about today, the biggest thing that we're going to highlight all throughout them is that the importance of having schedules and routines is going to work well for ourselves, okay? Use of moderation and modification. So one kind of side note about me that some of you know who have come to our Lunch and Learns before is that I'm actually a type 1 diabetic. And so it's different than type 2. I am a type 1. I've been this way for years and rely on insulin in order to help to maintain my health, as well as making sure I'm getting good nutrition and activity level with it. One thing that diabetics particularly struggle with is the idea that they have to take away everything because they have diabetes. Anytime you take an all or nothing approach, it usually leads to failure, right? And not wanting to do it. And so even whenever we're working with our diabetic patients here at HIMG, one of the key things that we try to focus on with them, especially whenever it comes to our nutrition, is how we're going to use moderation and modification in order to promote a healthier food choice, lifestyle choices whenever we are partaking in activities, or strategies for grocery shopping, recipe prep. It all comes down to this, which is kind of nice, because whenever we think about elimination, it's a very small world we live in. You know, it doesn't promote a lot of creativity, a lot of opportunity. And so what we're wanting to do with this is expand the box and look at ways in which we can use these two strategies to kind of help ourselves be healthier. Expectations. We kind of have like a slogan or a little saying within the world of psychology to a degree, is that expectations tend to be planned failures, right? Whether they're in our own lives, that we have expectations for ourselves or that we have expectations for others, and certainly whenever others have expectations for us, we always feel like we tend to be failing, or that it never turns out to be as good as what we want it to be. And so this is where we want to scrap the idea of expectations. Okay? Let's go ahead and leave them at the door, and instead we want to promote openness. We want to promote a non-judgmental stance to ourselves and what we're going to be able to do with these different lifestyle changes. And we want to be mindful of the excuse generator, right? We've all got that, okay? Some of us, it's really well formed and developed. We may not even have insight into how often we use it, but then we can look at our kids or our spouses and be like, that's it right there. So we want to be mindful of when those excuses are coming and how they are serving as blocks and barriers to our quality of life and what we're trying to do to, again, promote that healthier version of ourselves within this. All right, so sleep. Sleep is one of the most important things that we do on a daily basis that we pay very little attention to in terms of how it actually works within our health system, within our coping, within our lives in general. It's one of the actual fundamental behaviors that we have as humans. And that's one thing to think about, is that sleep is actually a behavior. Think about that. We train babies to sleep, don't we? To go to bed at night and to be awake during the day. So by that kind of definition, it is a behavior. And what we want to look at is consistency. And, you know, I work with primary adolescents, adults, and older adults as my patient population. And one of the things that I almost feel a little silly in kind of talking about or asking them is, what's your bedtime? You know, because that's something my parents would be saying to me, right? But honestly, that's a very good indicator of how you're functioning on a daily basis. A lot of us tend to have a lot of racing thoughts that keep us awake at night, that keep us from falling asleep at nighttime. That's whenever the worry machine kind of turns on, right? And then everything that, we didn't think about during the day just kind of tends to rush in. It can be a time that we feel very unsettled. Sleep, some of us are able just to go to sleep pretty easily, but then we wake up throughout the night. We're easy wakers and our quality's not great. Or that we have a lack of a schedule and routine, that we're doing it just at odd times. Having a consistent schedule with sleep is critical for us at any stage in life. For those of you that are parents or that are serving as a parental role to kids, it's even pivotal with them. And that's where, we just came off of Christmas break, and I know that a lot of parents are probably struggling getting their kids back on that sleep schedule, because holiday means we can stay up as late as we want or sleep in. No. My poor almost 15-year-old in our house has never been able to have that flexibility. So a general rule of thumb, even for us as adults when we're on vacations or holidays, is that whatever time that you would normally get up, not allowing that to extend in either way an hour to an hour and a half. So I'm not staying up an hour into an hour and a half later, and I'm not sleeping in that much. That really helps us to kind of get back on that schedule and routine whenever work starts back up or whenever school starts back up. Sleep is important to have as a consistent pattern of behavior because it helps us to learn. It helps us with attention, with concentration. We're able to think clearer whenever our mind has had an opportunity to rest. And that's because sleep's real primary job within our body is to help us to repair and to restore from everything physical as well as emotional that's happened to us throughout the day. And so it's a very critical component of life. And so at these different stages, whenever we're learning and whenever we're developing, whenever we're working, making sure that this is consistent is key. And if you've noticed within yourself that your sleep is starting to change at different points of time within your life, that's a really, really important thing to talk to with your doctor about, okay? Because that could be an indicator of different sleep disorders, such as sleep apnea, which is highly correlated with heart disease. It can also affect your management of diabetes, your sleep. And that's because it plays an important role within our metabolism. So, in thinking about that, sleep serves as kind of a regulator for our body, right? So it's using this time to rest, to repair, to restore itself, and to kind of re-energize it for what's about to happen to it throughout the day. If that is off track, we're not going to be feeling great, okay? We're already going to start off the day at about a third of a tank. And then the rest of the emotional things that we face, the rest of the tasks that we have to do, whatnot, is going to further kind of deplete us. It also is important for metabolism in that it helps in terms of the speed and rate of metabolism. So if one of your goals as part of your own personal wellness plan is to try to reduce your weight for whatever reason or goal, not having consistent sleep patterns is going to be a huge hindrance to you, okay? So if weight management is something you're concerned with and you're just focused on food or exercise and not sleep, you're going to be missing an important piece of this entire puzzle, and it will actually help you immensely if you're able to regulate this. Another advantage to that is that, again, if you are going to be working some type of wellness plan which involves increasing your activity level, that activity level is going to have muscle tearing, shearing, all different types of things are going to occur, and your body's going to want to rest and repair from that. And so your quality of sleep will actually improve if you add that as part of your health routine. Okay? Does that make sense? All right.
You mentioned something about the worry machine.
The worry
How
machine.
to turn that off.
It's awful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? We didn't mean to create it or make it.
It happens.
It does. It does. And there's a lot of different techniques that we can try to use for it. Some people will try to schedule worry time throughout the day. Other ways that we can kind of do this is just approaching those situations. A lot of times whenever we're worrying, it's because of a situation that we either can't control because it's future focused. It involves other people, which none of us can control or change, right? I mean, maybe that would be a great thing or not, I'm not sure. But it really takes kind of like a version of like radical acceptance. Like if it's not here within my hands present, then I can't really work on it in this moment here today. So doing a lot of mindfulness practices, things that we try to teach whenever we're having our clinic. We're going to be doing a sleep disorders or just a helping to improve our sleep kind of groups that we're going to be starting here in the spring. So if that's an issue, I encourage you to come to them, because we're going to be going over those different strategies. But it takes mindfulness, really, as to what's kind of happening that's triggering that worry machine to go on, and then different strategies that we can use throughout the day and in those moments to kind of help to regulate that. So, really great question. Complicated to answer, but those are some basics just with it right away. We were doing this discussion actually earlier in the week with a different group, and a gentleman asked about quality versus quantity. How much sleep does a person actually need in order for it to be beneficial? And the typical, again, maybe psych answer is it kind of depends, okay? But it's a very unique process for that individual. Again, with children, adolescents, anybody's brain who is growing and really trying to absorb more information, the more that you're able to sleep, the better, okay? Again, my son actually, he's 15, I promise he's cool, but he has a little alarm on his phone that goes off every night that tells him to go to bed. And then he's also a type 1 diabetic, so we're very, very rare. But he also has a schedule on his phone that tells him to get up and how he needs to go about that, and that helps him manage his diabetes, that helps him be a good student, all different types of things. But he's a type of kid that has to have that kind of quality, about 8.5 hours of sleep, okay? Babies, toddlers need to have that sleep because of their brain development. Us as adults, we tend to not sleep as much as what we need due to worries, due to other things going on. On average, 7 to 6 hours of quality sleep is what's needed. And that's where there's that difference, is that we could sleep all day long and still not have any energy, right? Because more sleep does not necessarily promote greater energy. Again, here's your trick. If you notice that you're able to fall asleep well at nighttime, but your body naturally wakes up in the morning and your mind sits there and says, oh, go back to sleep. You don't need to be awake. You've got plenty of time. You don't have anything to do today. Reward yourself. That's that excuse generator we talked about a minute ago. Okay? Whenever your body is naturally ready to wake up with it. Don't let your mind serve as an interference to that kind of pattern. Your body is ready to wait because it has finally gotten everything that it needs from that night in order to be ready for the day. If you go back to sleep, if you're a constant snooze presser, you're never getting anything out of those extra 9 minutes. I'm sorry. It's not really helping you. It may make you feel good there for a minute or two, but honestly, it's not helping to promote better sleep. And so getting up in the morning when your body's ready to get up is really important. Some people function better on less sleep. Okay, my husband happens to be one of those people. He functions better on less sleep, but that's due to his own characteristics, understanding what his body needs and how well it functions. If you know that you're not able to function on little sleep, which is me, that kind of lifestyle is not going to work. Okay, so it really takes understanding what your body's individual needs are and really listening to them. All right, and again, the role of age in this is critical. And so, again, we have this whole lifespan type of development where we have infancy and then we have, greater adulthood. Our sleep needs change at these different points in time. And as we get older, we often find that we benefit from greater amounts of sleep, but that it's more restless. And so it's just important for us to be aware of the role of age in our activity level. Yes?
What about a nap in the afternoon?
That's a great question. And honestly, it kind of depends upon age and routines whenever it comes to that. Generally speaking, if you're going to take a nap, making sure that it's not more than 45 minutes and before 3 o'clock is what's recommended. Now, if you have no problems going to sleep at night, you have a consistent sleep schedule, you have good quality, and you wake up in the morning, that nap is not serving as interference to you. However, if you're not sleeping great at nighttime, your quality of rest is really poor, you're waking up feeling groggy, and about 2 o'clock, you find yourself getting hit with that nap zone, that's not going to be helpful for you setting up to the next night's sleep. And honestly, that is probably due to just the energy resources within your body, and that's where nutrition is going to come into play here in activity.
So tired,
Mm-hmm.
and I just have to lay down.
Yeah.
That's the way I feel.
Sure. And again, that can be beneficial if it's generally not longer than an hour before 3 o'clock because it won't likely disrupt your sleep that night. But if you have no problems with sleep, it's fine. If you have problems with sleep, it's probably not helping you to feel much more rested.
I use a CPAP machine.
Oh, yes.
And I don't have an alarm clock or anything. I just
Good for you.
at the same time every morning.
Good for you. And those, and you know, do you use the CPAP when you're taking a nap?
Yeah.
Okay, good. If you're on a CPAP, you want to make sure that anytime you're doing a sleep, you want to have it, because if not, you're going to get yourself out of that habit and routine of using it.
I just can't sleep without it.
Good. One of the best devices ever made. Thank you for using it and making friends with the octopus is kind of what we refer to.
Nutrition that causes you want to take a nap, or even
Yes.
you slept enough.
Right on. And that's where the next thing we talk about has to be about nutrition. Because what nutrition actually is for our body is its energy. You know, and it, you know, kind of as we talk about this, the way to maybe conceptualize it or think of it, you know, I grew up here in Appalachia, in this region, and we're kind of taught collectively, regardless of maybe what our beliefs are, is that our body's our vessel and we're supposed to kind of take care of it, right? Well, our body relies on us being sure that we're putting adequate fuel into our system. So if we think about it from maybe like a car perspective, if I try to put chainsaw fluid into my vehicle, it's probably not going to run efficiently, right? It requires a certain amount of fuel. And that's what food really needs to be for us. It needs to be seen as fuel, okay? Here we tend to think of food as being comfort, right? Like mashed potatoes, macaroni and cheese, chicken and dumplings, home cooking, like some of those meals like our parents used to make. We also tend to think of food as being a reward. So if I've been good, I get to eat a cupcake, right? Or we think of it as punishment. So if I've been bad, then I have to eat broccoli or a vegetable. We don't tend to see food as really what it is, and we label it as having these different qualities to it. Food's main goal within our body is fuel, and that's where it comes into play with energy and with sleep. And we're going to kind of talk about that. The main thing to think about whenever it comes to our nutrition is that it's about moderation and modification, not elimination. And so if we are a diabetic, we want to be mindful of how many carbs that we're taking into our body. Even if we're trying to promote a healthier weight plan or even energy, we want to be mindful of how many carbs we're putting into our body, because carbs in basic terms convert to sugar. So the best example of carb overload and energy level is Thanksgiving, right? Okay, everybody's laughing, right? Okay. Well, if we think about that, and typically, when do hunters go out? Before or after the meal? Before, right? They're getting out real early, going out for deer, going out and doing whatever else. Would they have the energy to do so after we've had this kind of like carb-laden meal? No. Okay? Unfortunately, and somehow within our society, communities, whatever, the U.S., we've adopted the idea that Thanksgiving's every day. And so the types of food that we're almost eating every day are those heavily carb-laden foods. And whenever we consume too much carbohydrates, it actually is an inefficient source of energy. Some carbs are great because, again, the sugar and everything else helps to get our system going. But if all of our meals that we're eating are heavy in breads and pastas and chips and processed desserts, even in things that are supposedly healthy for us, like some granola bars, right? Yogurts we all think of being healthy. Look at the carb content on those. Look at the sugar content on those labels and see how that's actually affecting your energy level. And by making those modifications in that area, we're able to actually promote greater energy and more efficient fuel for ourselves that's going to be healthier no matter what type of, honestly, medical condition we may have or that we may be susceptible to. And so with that, practicing alternatives and giving yourself an opportunity to be curious about meals is really important. So, for example, in our house, we oftentimes will substitute cauliflower for potatoes, okay? Cheap? Actually, it's cheaper than potatoes. Let's just be for real about that first, right? You can always get it in the grocery store. It's a big new fad kind of a thing right now. But we will make mashed cauliflower instead of mashed potatoes, okay? Simple, easy, tastes great. We had it last night with some deer gravy or something, okay? So it was a wonderful alternative. Doing that same kind of mentality and applying that to potato soup. That's a real common comfort food that we tend to have here in the wintertime. I simply substitute what the potatoes would be for cauliflower and use it that way, okay? It may take some time to kind of wrap your head around the use of this, but you can make cauliflower mac and cheese, all different kinds of things. It's about being willing to kind of try and explore. Squashes are great alternatives. Spaghetti squash, zucchinis are wonderful to kind of start to reincorporate back into our diet and to really think about some of those old treasures that maybe our grandparents used to fix and bringing them back, like Brussels sprouts. You used to have Brussels sprouts or different types of cabbages at your meal maybe a lot of times as a child, but your kids probably aren't serving that, right, even though they're adults. Bringing back some of those old classics can really be helpful because they're generally green, they're generally nutritious, and really can help a whole lot with our modification and moderation. And when we're talking about moderation, that does come down to serving size, okay? And so the easiest kind of brief tool I can kind of give you to think about, again, and in knowing how we tend to kind of do things here, is that oftentimes we serve everybody the same amount as we serve ourselves regardless of age, sex, whatever, right? This needs to kind of be an individual based thing. And I would also add that the ladles that we use for stirring should not be used for serving, okay? How often do we do that though? All the time, right? We're sitting there stirring or whatever it is, and then we use that same ladle to serve food. That's often more than what we actually need. We also have this idea that we have to eat till we're full. Really a healthier kind of mindset to help us out with this moderation is to eat till you're satisfied. Our bodies don't feel good walking around with food babies, right? I mean, for real, they honestly don't. They feel better and they're able to work more efficiently whenever they're satisfied, okay? So that's a real important kind of distinction to make. We also, as part of the diabetes program that we actually do here, we kind of believe in like a 3-by-3 meal plan. And this is where that consistency and routines become real important. And what we're talking about with this is we are talking about eating breakfast. Again, I feel like somebody's like, you know, like a great grandparent or something. And did you go to bed last night? Have you had your breakfast this morning? But those are the fundamentals that we've lost track of, okay? And so really, again, getting back to them is important. So having a breakfast, having some type of lunch, having a dinner, and the other 3 components to it are snacks. But when we're talking about snacks, we want to think about things, again, that are going to promote energy, that are going to promote fuel within our body. And so that means that we want to have proteins as part of it, as well as maybe some vegetables, or maybe a better type of carbohydrate like a fruit. So for example, maybe for breakfast we're having, I don't know, some eggs, maybe a few pieces of bacon and a slice of toast with maybe a little bit of butter on it. Fine. We've got a lot of protein there. We've got a little bit of a carb to kind of help us out, and that's going to promote energy and sustainability throughout the morning. Maybe for an early afternoon snack, we go to having one of those pre-served out kind of, you know, no syrup or whatever else kind of added fruit snacks. But if we just have that fruit snack alone, then that's going to be an inefficient fuel source. It's going to pump us up for a little bit, but it's not going to be sustained long term. And if we have a condition like diabetes, what's that going to do to us is shoot our blood sugar up. So pairing that back with a protein becomes important. So having an apple just off the tree and then a few slices of like cheddar cheese is a perfect pairing, because then at that point we're not having a naked carb. Carbs in overload are always going to make us tired, sleepy, and sluggish. Again, anytime you're feeling that way almost in the mid-afternoon, I would look back to what you kind of put in your body up until that point. And if you notice that maybe you had oatmeal and then maybe you had a sandwich or whatever else for lunch, and you may have skipped having, I don't know, a snack, and our coffee has more sugar and cream in it than it has coffee, then there we go. That's probably why we're going to feel kind of tired in the afternoon, is because we've had a carb overload throughout that point in time. So with our snacks, we're not having naked carbs with it. So we always want to pair our snacks with some type of healthy protein. Cheeses, nuts, all of that's great. Some people in our groups have even asked us about peanut butter. Okay, a lot of people like peanut butter. The biggest thing I can encourage you to do is read the labels. Look at the labels. This is where we want to make sure that whatever we're putting into our body is as close to the source as possible. So, for example, if you compare, and I won't use the name brand, but one name brand of peanut butter to one that's more organic peanut butter, you're going to notice a drastic difference in the ingredients. One of them is just going to have peanuts and salt. That's what peanut butter is supposed to be, right? The other one, which has the highest amount of purchase, sales, or whatever, has another ingredient, actually several others added to it. Who says sugar? Molasses. Pretty much the same thing, right? Added to it. And so then we're not getting some of the healthier benefits from the peanut butter if it's mixed with a bunch of molasses in it, okay? So whenever you are making these healthy selections for your nutrition, it'll take you a little bit of time at first, but please read the labels. If you don't understand what that is, it probably doesn't belong in your body, okay? I mean, it's just not naturally likely what goes in there. So be aware of that. Hydration. A lot of times we don't drink enough water. Has your doctor ever told you that before? Yeah, all the time. We put other things, other drinks, pops, sodas, teas, coffees, whatever into our body. Our body, however, was made to consume water. And honestly, from an energy standpoint, that is very helpful too, because it helps to keep our system refreshed. It helps to keep it rejuvenated. It helps with our metabolism. It helps with our complexion, everything. And so we want to make sure that we're taking in adequate amounts of water per day, at least fluid. And, I just grew up in an odd house. We didn't drink pop as kids. I don't know how. I mean, I grew up in the Cabell County area, but our parents didn't give it to us. So we never grew up with that kind of sweet taste to us, but that's honestly where the vast majority of us get off track. It's not so much with our meals, it's what we're drinking that really throws us over a loop. Even if you're drinking diets, okay? And, I'm one of those people that as a philosophy for my own life, I just don't believe in necessarily putting artificial things into it. And so I'm not a big proponent of artificial sweeteners. Talk with your own medical professional about that for yourself. But I mean, we do see blood sugar spikes sometimes with some of these things. Some things are indicating that it might also have other effects on us. And so I just, again, try to promote as close to the farm to table as possible, okay? And this is, and why it's in quotes, is that seems to be a fad right now, right? Like we got all these farm-to-table restaurants that are popping up, all these farm-to-table dining options. Well, guess what? That's how we used to eat, right? The problem is that we got away from it, okay? And so what we really want to look at in terms of our nutrition is how much of this we can start to reincorporate back into our lives. I'm a huge advocate of going to farmers markets, locally grown resource types of crops. We have one here every Wednesday. I think it's tomorrow. I think it runs from like 9 to 11 or something. And a guy brings in fruits and vegetables, very reasonable prices, farm.
Where does,
It takes place right in here.
in the conference room?
Yeah, yeah.
From
Mm-hmm.
9 to 11?
Every Wednesday, yep. So, talk to us about it afterwards. Right here at HIMG, we have that here as an option, yeah. Well-rounded healthcare is what we're trying to promote here, right? And so the option's right here to get it. Going to your local farmers markets is a great idea. If you live within the Huntington area, there's down in the west end of Huntington, there's a nice shopping center down there that you can get a lot of great meats, vegetables, all fresh, all from local farms. Encourage you to do this. Try to do that as much as what you can. Literally, again, shopping the perimeter of a grocery store is ideal, because that was what the old farmers markets were about to begin with, you know? We didn't have all those processed foods that are filled within the aisles. And so sticking along that vegetable, fruits, kind of moving into the meats and dairy section is a great idea, you know, to again, try to reincorporate back within your life and within your meal plans with it. Whenever you are going to the grocery store, again, like I said, shop the perimeter, but read those labels. I even encourage you to read the labels on bubble gum. Like if you're a gum chewer, read the labels on the gum. Okay? A lot of, again, referencing back to our diabetic groups, they notice that they have higher blood sugar at different points of time, and it's from chewing gum, even sugar-free gum, because it has different artificial sweeteners. There's sugar alcohols in it, which is going to raise your blood sugar. Never think of it.
Alcohol.
Yeah, sugar, like a sugar form of alcohol. Yeah, yeah. Not like the drinking kind, but a different form of it, yeah. So.
Well, I have a niece who's a type 1 from age 9, and she was told by a doctor when she was well into adulthood that diabetics should never drink diet pop. It attacks the kidneys.
Well,
and he would rather have her drink a regular Pepsi occasionally than to drink, you know, the diet stuff.
well, I mean, to each, you know what I mean, and that's what her provider kind of told her with it. The thing about just pops in general are going to make you thirstier. They're not going to necessarily quench your thirst. They really are going to make you thirstier long term, and that's going to throw your body into maybe unnecessarily overworking, and you're not getting adequate hydration from pop because it's processing through your system so quickly. And so I would really, you know, if you're hard to drink with water, even other countries do this, and it's really healthy. They'll chop up a few little fruits and put it in your water, right? That can be hard if we're drinking out of bottled waters, but honestly, if you get those little plastic things of like lemon and limes that you can get at the grocery store and just squirt a little bit, tiny bit of that in there and don't put anything else in there, that can help you if you're not liking the taste of water, as some people, you know, don't prefer. But really just adequate hydration is important with this nutrition, and that all helps with energy. So do you see what I'm saying with the energy kind of comment? Everything that you put in your body kind of serves as fuel.
So how much water is recommended per day?
Well, about 8 to 12 of those things sometimes. Yeah, but it depends upon your person, you as a person. Again, your activity level is a big piece of it. What you're doing on a daily basis, you know, is real important, and what your health goals are. Now, there's also a thing of too much water that you don't want to kind of cross that line with. But you just want to make sure that, again, talk with your doctor, make sure that you're getting adequate nutrition and all these things. Speak with a dietitian, a registered nutritionist. I mean, if you're really serious about trying to kind of learn about this, they are the experts in this. They're the people to go to. I can help you with the behaviors to incorporate those things into your life. They're the ones that can really sit down with you and help you to understand how your individual health needs can be met through foods, through adequate hydration. And then, like I said, I can help you out getting those things as part of schedules and routines.
Does the water in coffee or tea, does that
Well, right. Coffee's a diuretic, so it's, you know, tea is the same thing too. You know, I drink coffee as well, but again, in moderation. I cut it off at a certain time of day, and so that way I'm not interfering with my sleep. I'm mindful of the effects of that kind of stuff, especially for people that have a propensity to anxiety and depression. If you're eating too many carbs, a lot of times you feel tired and fatigued. Well, guess what? You also feel that way if you're depressed a lot. Anxiety is a lot about having jittery feelings. Well, if you're all the time drinking a bunch of caffeine, a bunch of pops, or putting a bunch of sugar or carbs into your body, you're going to be going through that too. Yeah. And so even when working with my regular like patients that have depression and anxiety, we're also focusing on this to kind of help to manage those conditions as well. Exercise. Everybody hears that, and that's a bad word for them sometimes, right? That's why I put it first as activity. Exercise is incredibly helpful to our lives for numerous reasons that I'm sure we're all kind of aware of, but just to kind of touch on a few things, if this is a part of the goal that you've put for yourself for your healthier you in 2019, it's really important that you identify what your personal goals of exercise are. What are you using this for? You know, are you using this to lose weight, to tone up, to promote a better energy level so that way you can play around with your grandkids more efficiently? Whatever it comes down to, you need to really define what your goal is, and then that can help you to determine what type of exercise plan is going to be best for you as that individual. I do believe and have used in my life going to a gym. A lot of times they have personal trainers there that you can talk with, and that they can help you to kind of understand what types of exercises you can do based upon what your goals are and what your body is actually able to do. You know, if you have a bad shoulder, bad back, and you go into this thinking, well, I'm just going to start exercising and going to the gym, and you haven't had that time with a good personal trainer or fitness expert, then you can do yourself more harm than good and then quit altogether, right? And then we got a separate problem on our hands all over again. So most insurance plans will actually pay for gym membership. I encourage you to check with that. Sometimes your doctor has to write a prescription for it, but they can do so. A lot of insurance plans also encourage you to see a personal trainer. Doesn't mean you have to meet with them all the time, but just a little bit of the time so that way you learn what's going to be best for you. Generally 3 times a week for 30 minutes. And that's most helpful if it's somewhat cardio induced. So that means walking. That means doing some type of activity that's going to get your heart rate a little bit higher. We know that we get the best benefits out of it if it is 3 times a week, at least 30 minutes, and that it has some type of cardiac component to it. Even if you're switching pretty rapidly in between different sets of things, that's good. Yoga can actually really increase your heart rate a lot depending upon what type of practice that you're going to. Biking is another good option, whether it's a stationary bike or just a regular kind of recreational bike. Some people will do water-based aerobics or swimming. That's great, especially if you're worried about impact on your joints and muscles. But whatever it is, trying to work that back into our life is important. It serves as stress relief because it's actually allowing our body to discharge some of the things that have kind of happened to it. Most time people never regret a workout. You know, they always feel better after they do it. Now, we'll generate 10,000 excuses, again, going back to that excuse generator as to why not. We're already too tired, right? We've got too much to do. We don't have enough time in the day. Really making sure that you carve out some amount of time for this is going to be very helpful to your health long term. We know this by looking at countries that actually maintain culturally some type of exercise or workout routine, that they live longer. Their rates of chronic diseases are less than what ours are. Their stress levels less. It just has so many therapeutic kind of qualities to it that we may not value or really kind of put ourselves with our own place with things. The other thing with it, again, it's going to help you to sleep. So making this a full circle type of thing, it's going to help you sleep. Exercise too, if you're eating a bunch of inefficient fuels, you're not going to want to feel like working out. But if you've just worked out, you're not necessarily going to want to go through and put some of that stuff back in your body. So again, by just doing one of these things, we're helping to cultivate a greater sense of our overall health. Hobbies. We tend to forget about hobbies as adults, right? We forget many things. We teach children how to say no, and then as adults we forget, right? That's something I have to work with a lot of people on. Like, you know, you can still say that word. What? You have to almost give adults permission to say it. That we can still engage in fun, enjoyable activities. A lot of times I ask folks, well, what was the last thing that you did that you enjoyed? And they sit there for a minute. It's like, I don't know. It's been a while. What is it that I like doing? Anytime that we lose touch with that, we've lost touch with ourselves and we've lost touch with our overall wellness as a person. And so I really encourage folks to really think about what types of activities did we used to do as a kid that we really enjoyed, that we really liked. And like I said, if that's some type of craft, maybe it was sewing, maybe it was reading, maybe it was crochet or needlepoint, working on cars, model planes, flying a kite, you know what I mean? Drawing with chalk. You know, a lot of adults are doing those adult coloring books right now. found to be really helpful and therapeutic. Anytime we put something in our hands, it keeps things kind of from sinking into our heads. Okay? Idle time and idle hands do the devil's work is an old kind of saying, right? And so these types of activities help to promote our overall wellness. Plus, if our hands are busy or engaged in doing something, then we're not going to be emotionally maybe eating, right? Or eating because we're bored, because that happens a lot, right? We don't even notice sometimes whenever we're sitting there snacking, and it's just because we're bored and we don't think we have anything to do, and we have to have something to do with our hands. So putting that into our hands is really key. Going back to whatever those old hobbies were, or picking up a new one, learning a language, a new recipe, a new style of cooking, genealogy, maybe looking at fossils and learning what those things are. At one point in time in my life, I think my dad actually wanted to learn about different trees, so he went around just collecting leaves, you know what I mean, while he was working, but he found it to be a very peaceful kind of nice thing to do. Go back to that, if you still have one of your old scout books, peer through that thing again and see what you can reconnect with. Last two things on here, outside time. If I could write a prescription for anything, it would probably be this, outside time. Again, we used to spend a lot more time outside as a society, as a culture, than what we do now. Our kids used to spend a lot of time. Our grandkids, right, used to spend a whole lot more time outside than what we do now. And this is where fresh air, being outside, even if the weather is kind of crummy, is an essential part of our lives. That fresh air that we get is incredibly rejuvenating, it's therapeutic, it's stress reducing, it helps us to clear our mind, clear our head. Everything can kind of be improved from just taking that 20 minutes outside. So I encourage folks to go out there and have your morning coffee on your back porch, on your front porch. Watch some birds, the deer, I don't know, what's happening in your neighborhood. Bring a blanket if it's cold. In the summertime, if you have an opportunity to have a little fire pit going, do it. If you have a screened-in porch, I see a lot of people that have those and no one uses them. Okay, it's really unfortunate. It's not necessarily as great as maybe having some of those sun rays, but if it's going to keep the bugs off and get you some of that fresh air, I really don't care, But spending that amount of time outside can be so helpful, therapeutic to our lives, because that's what our bodies were made to do. Our bodies were kind of made to have time outside and not to be in houses so much, not to be in shelter as much as what they are. And so really, really try to consider ways in which you can reincorporate that back into your life. And the last thing I want to mention is something that is generally the hardest for all of us to do, because at some level, no matter what role we play within our family or lives, we're generally some type of a caretaker, care provider. And that means that we're not doing that for ourselves. And oftentimes, we tend to have this, false belief that if we are caring or doing things that we like to do, that we enjoy doing, that are helpful and healthy for us, that it's selfish. Self-care is not selfish. It's imperative that we all kind of take that time to do whatever it is that makes us to feel good, to kind of give us a few minutes of break, to relax in whatever definition that may be for you. So, for example, if somebody asks me, what do I do for relaxation, or, what's it like? Sitting for me is not relaxing. I'm just not one of those people. You know what I mean? It's very challenging for me to watch movies or television programs. Movement is relaxing to me. Okay? It's important that I know that, because whenever I'm stressed out, whenever I'm having a hard time with something, I need to know how best to care for myself. And so for me, that's movement. For some people, it might be drawing, it might be writing, it might be sitting down and watching like their television program, not somebody else's, but theirs, It might be enjoying some type of meal that they wanted to have or try. That's important for us to do, is taking that time to actually care for ourselves. We find that whenever we do that, we're better able to care for others. And I think one thing above maybe all else for us to kind of consider is that every single person in this room has served as a role model or as a guide for somebody else in your life. Okay? And you may not know that. I'm going to say that right now. You may not be aware of that, but I guarantee that if any of you were around children at any point in your life, at one point during that time, you were or are that person at any point in time, at any point in age. And this is where we want, if we want to kind of change, our home, our family, maybe even our greater communities or society, that really comes down to that acknowledgement that others are actually learning off of us. That's how we kind of all got in this shape to begin with, is that we learned unhealthy maybe ways of coping, dealing with nutrition, with different parts of our life. And so with that being said, us taking time for ourselves, us exploring new ways, us caring for our body is a way for us to kind of also teach our kids how to do that.
Where does meditation fit in?
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's, again, an individual kind of preference. I talk about it with your medical provider. Generally speaking, whenever it comes to almost any condition that we have, we want to be aware of what we can do from our own standpoint to help ourselves be the healthiest patient we can be. With that, making sure we get adequate sleep, nutrition, activity plan is a core component of it, no matter what medical condition we have, okay? With meditation, meditation's huge. Medication, what I'll say is that medication helps us with those things. I thought that's what you said at first. And that, for someone like me, I have to have insulin in order to kind of live and function. But if I'm not doing these other things, I'm not taking care of my diabetes, period. You know what I mean? And so medication is generally a helpful guide for us, but we want to try to be as proactive to not be on it as much as we are. I just talked with a patient this morning that said they felt like they were doing nothing but eating pills. Well, how about we start putting some kale or some other types of foods within our diet, or you know what I mean? Working some other things into our life so that way we don't feel like we're coming to that point. Meditation is incredibly helpful. Mindfulness practices are incredibly helpful. For 2,000 years, this has been a way in which people have kind of coped with different things that have happened. We in this culture just seem to be so fast-paced that we're not focusing on anything that's even happening right now, except the worries, right? Or what happened in the past, but never in the present. And what mindfulness and meditation try to help us to promote is just being present in this moment, in this space, and in how things are going, and not becoming attached to thoughts, right? Like those worry thoughts at nighttime. So at that point, thinking of your thoughts as like leaves on a stream and allowing them to kind of pass, or having your mind be like Teflon, where it's non-stick. We don't want our minds to be like Velcro. It's helpful. Practice is what it comes down to. Mindfulness, meditation is a practice, but it doesn't mean just kind of sitting in a corner and being quiet. It can be walking, okay? Honestly, it can even be eating. Like a mindfulness practice can be eating. It can be drinking something. It's just making you focus in on being in the moment. Like even with the salads that you had today, did any of them have, what ingredients were in them? Broccoli, tomatoes. Peppers, okay. What kind of tastes were a part of it? Like if you had to guess, like if you had dressing on yours, what was the ingredients in the dressing?
I know ranch is the worst thing.
Well, it doesn't matter if it's good or if it's bad. Did you taste it?
Good.
Okay, you tasted it though, right? And what is it about ranch dressing that you like then?
The flavors.
Okay, what the flavor, is it zesty or is it creamy?
It's creamy.
Creamy. Okay, flavorful. What mindfulness gets us to do is not just to see, well, it tastes good, but what are the components of it that make it taste good, kind of a thing. Like if we were to use, and this is an example back to what we were kind of talking about earlier, just of mindfulness, kind of a practice, mashed potatoes. Everybody think back to like homemade mashed potatoes. Okay, you know what kind of potatoes were probably put in there. You likely know how they were boiled, right? What do people use to boil them, maybe? Favorite mashed potatoes? Idaho, okay. Russet, all right. What kind of liquids put in it? Water. Sometimes people put milk in it. Sometimes people boil their potatoes in chicken broth, right? To give them a different flavor with it. Yeah, right. So then you also know, did they put sour cream in it? Did they put milk in it? Is butter in it? Was there some garlic? Was there some pepper? If you think back to the last time you had mashed potatoes, a good serving of it, you could probably pick out those individual flavors within it. That's what mindfulness is. It's just being able to be present in that moment and pick out those individual differences instead of just seeing it as whatever, scarfing. It also helps to slow down your eating. It also helps to make sure that we're eating till we're satisfied. I mean, it all folds together, and it can be a really helpful way to assist in our lives. So with that being said, I know we've kind of talked about a whole lot of things here. Are there any other questions that folks have that you can think of?
When it says light,
Uh-huh.
like butter or anything like that, is that really anything?
I mean, I would honestly defer to a nutritionist or to a dietitian, but quite frankly, most of those things tend to be marketing campaigns. Like, we even will kind of try to educate our diabetics in that you don't want to look for sugar-free, because if you're paying attention to sugar-free based foods, you're not paying attention to carbohydrates. And carbohydrates are what's making your sugar kind of go up. And so, again, talking with your physician, with your medical team, determining which of those things are actually going to be the healthiest for you to put into your body is going to be the best plan. For me, and talking with, I have an endocrinologist, a primary care provider, and I've met with a dietitian to understand, for me, what is the healthiest types of fats, carbs, proteins, vegetables for me to put in my body to help it to run efficiently. And by knowing that, I'm able to make those decisions much easier than me just kind of going blank at it, or by doing what everybody else is doing, which generally doesn't work for anybody, right? So, does that make sense? Yeah. But I would honestly just spend that kind of time, or just, research it, but listen to your body. Listen to your body with those things. Talk with your providers about it. They really like us for being proactive. Your providers would love it if you go in there and say, hey, you know what, I really want to know more about this. What can I do? Because they don't want to continue to kind of have to say, oh, well, we've got to increase this. We've got another medication on. They want to help you to be a healthier patient. And at a place like this where we have the resources in order to promote it, try to use it as much as what you can. So, another question?
I've always heard, people years ago, they fixed their own vegetables and everything. They seem like they lived long. I guess the processed food now, the expiration dates on that, all those ingredients, I don't think they're probably be the best for you.
It's not. Honestly, if we've made so many advances in medicine, especially within the United States, that we haven't even been able to experience their benefits because our behaviors are so unhealthy that we're not able to see how advanced they are. Now, that sounds kind of weird to say, but it's also true. So if we have adopted, or again, go back to that whole farm to table kind of idea where we're eating those fresh vegetables, those fresh foods, that we're getting foods that are not processed, that don't have a lot of hormones kind of injected in them, that they don't have food coloring added to them to make them look good, then we would probably be an incredibly healthy society if we went back to eating that way and then utilizing the resources that we have in this country through our medical advances. We just have honestly probably subsided that by not eating the way in which we should.
I guess we go probably do that to use processed foods because maybe they're cheaper. But overall, if your health goes down, have you really gained anything?
No, right. A few pounds, right? A few pounds and a few medical conditions and prescriptions along the way, maybe. But you're exactly right. And that's hard because a lot of those processed foods, they're cheap, they're quick, you know what I mean? They're easy. And then we're able to kind of go on with whatever we see as being important in that moment. But I don't know that that's necessarily the best way that we've kind of adapted to things. You know what I mean? And you're exactly right. By doing that, taking those shortcuts always into, generally long-term consequences that don't benefit us. And
usually the sodium content is just very high.
True. True. Absolutely. Taking again that mindful approach to what you're putting into your body is important, and how you go about eating your foods is important too. And this is, and maybe an aside from this in some ways, but having dinner around the table was a beautiful old school tradition that really, if we probably tried to bring it back, we'd feel more connected, healthier, a lot of decreased stress, you know what I mean, in our families. And especially around mealtime, it really does become a lot about sharing at that kind of point. And so, you know, if we're going to consider making these changes, going back to that old-fashioned tradition probably also wouldn't be a bad one to consider, especially whenever it comes to what we've talked about today. So, right, okay. Any other questions that you have, concerns, anything? Well, like Patty said, generally every second Tuesday of the month, we do a different topic. If something that we've talked about today you want to expand upon, seriously, call, tell Patty, and you know, I'll be happy to do a whole presentation on sleep, just on food, or mindfulness. We could do a whole one. I would love that. We'd bring in all kinds of things. It'd be a great old time. I mean, it's something you practice. You know, nobody's a pro at it. But on mindfulness, and what actually does that mean, and how does it kind of function within our lives? How can we teach others how to do it? Anything is game. So if you bring it up, I'm not afraid to talk about it, as fair warning. But we want this to be as helpful to you as possible. We have a whole lot of resources here at HIMG that we can get you connected with. If making yourself healthier is part of your goals or part of your path and your journey in 2019, talk with any of us and we'll try to help you get connected with the folks to make it possible for you. No matter what your medical condition is, it seems like we have a provider within this building that's able to help to assist you. And we really work hard on having that kind of continuum of care throughout our healthcare system. So thank you all so much. I appreciate your time. Yeah.